We also start our Catholic Alive gatherings with music. It's a very important part of it. And my goodness, what a treat it's been to have several of these musicians with us almost every week. So we welcome John Reddick and Jordy Hamilton and Miriam Shakely for some music to help get us started this evening.
Thank you, Dave. Let's begin with the hymn "Loving and Forgiving." Hymn number 1 in the yellow sheet. Loving and forgiving are you, O Lord, slow to anger, rich in kindness, loving and forgiving are you. All my being, bless the Lord, bless the holy name of God. All my being, bless the Lord, remembering His goodness of God. Loving and forgiving are you, O Lord, slow to anger, rich in kindness, loving and forgiving are you. God forgives us all our sins, healing those who live in pain, saving us from final death. God fills us with goodness and love. Loving and forgiving are you, O Lord, slow to anger, rich in kindness, loving and forgiving are you. May Christ be our light. Longing for light, we wait in darkness. Longing for truth, we turn to you. Make us your own, your holy people, light for the world to see. Christ be our light, shine in our hearts, shine through the darkness. Christ be our light, shine in your church, gathered today. Longing for peace, our world is troubled. Longing for hope, many despair. Your word alone has power to save us. Make us your living voice. Christ be our light, shine in our hearts, shine through the darkness. Christ be our light, shine in your church, gathered today.
Thanks very much, guys. Thanks a lot. I'd like to introduce our witness speaker next. Again, a regular part of our Catholic Alive programs, and we have had some wonderful, wonderful personal thoughts from witness speakers over the past several months. Our speaker tonight comes from St. Peter Parish, Linda Schnorr. Linda?
My name is Linda Schnorr, and I am a convert. I don't like that word, and I'll tell you why in a minute. I was baptized as an infant in the Lutheran Church. My parents were Lutherans. They did a good job of taking me to church and Sunday school, vacation Bible school, the whole works. I was confirmed as a Lutheran. We all went to church together. But shortly after I was confirmed, my parents quit going to church altogether. So I had no way to go to church, but I wanted to continue going to church. I was about 15 at the time, and I don't even know why they quit going to church. They got mad for some reason and quit going to church. So I had friends that I hooked up with, and I went to a non-denominational church nearby, and I begged rides to go there and so forth, but I kept going to church. There was a lot of negative talk about Catholics in my house, and I don't even know why that was. Something had happened to my parents in their lifetime that they did not like Catholics. I continued going to the non-denominational church, and when I began dating, it seemed like the biggest concerns my parents had were, does he smoke? And is he a Catholic? And I remember being questioned after every date. He smokes, doesn't he? I know you're lying. I know he smokes. Well, he's Catholic, isn't he? So I never dated any Catholics when I was at home. I respected my parents' wishes on that. And when it came time for me to go to college, I think most parents tell their children, don't party too much, don't drink too much, pay attention to your grades, and pay attention to your studies. What I was told is, don't date any Catholics. So through this, after I'd been at school at IUP for 3 weeks, on a Sunday night, a friend of mine, who was a Catholic girl from Butler, decided we wanted to go out. And the student union was closed that night, on Sunday night. And she was a Catholic, so we went to the Newman Center. And I thought, what could it hurt? Well, wouldn't you know that I met a nice-looking young man that night. I didn't meet him, I saw him. And I thought, wow, that's for me. He had a guitar around his neck, too. So I did not dance with him that night. I did not meet him. But the practice was for the last person you danced with to walk you back to the dormitory after the dance was over. And my girlfriend from Butler had this nice young guy walking her back to the dormitory. And I was walking with someone else. And I thought, wow, she really made out good tonight. I really liked him. So when she came over to my dormitory room after we got back, I said, Marty, you did okay. Who is that guy? She says, he just kept asking about you. And so the very next night he called me up and he asked me to go to a movie with him. And I thought, what can it hurt? So I went to the movie with him and I thought, whoa, I was gone. I continued to date him for the whole 4 years that I was in college and for another year after that. And the escalation of the anti-Catholic talk really took hold of him. It really escalated. My parents did not want me dating this guy. They gave us a really hard time. But, I was hooked. I really liked him. So, I decided that I wanted certain things for my life. As our relationship got a little more serious, I decided I want to get married, I want to have children, and I want my whole family to worship in the same church. I want to go to church together with my family. And I thought, there's only one way that can happen, and that is for me to find out about the Catholic religion and see if I could accept it as my own. So I went to the priest at college, and I asked him for instructions. They called it instructions at that time. And I went to a series of meetings along with some other students, and I decided I would become a Catholic. It was very close to the Lutheran religion, not many differences really. And meanwhile, my parents were telling me all these terrible things about Catholics and the things they did, which seemed ridiculous to me because I didn't see that at all. we did eventually get married at St. Peter's Church, and that was a year after I graduated. I had already become a Catholic. I made my first communion in Indiana, Pennsylvania, and I was a Catholic when we got married. My parents refused to come to our wedding. They didn't come, which was sad, but I thought, that's their choice. They were invited. After we got married, courtesy of the armed forces, we went to France for 3 years. And while we were in France, we were able to travel around and see a lot of the shrines and the beautiful churches and the artworks. We went to Lourdes and saw where St. Bernadette had the vision of Mary. We went to the catacombs. We went to Rome. We went to the Vatican. We had an armed forces audience with the Pope. We went to many, many churches, Notre Dame, Sacre-Cœur, all the big, beautiful ones. And this was really intriguing to me. I mean, it really brought out the tradition and the history of the church, which is what I thought, how could it be bad? It's been around so long. How could it be bad? I didn't have any hard time in adapting to being a Catholic, except I didn't like being called a convert. To me, convert meant Johnny-come-lately, wasn't a born Catholic. Maybe I couldn't be a good Catholic because I wasn't born Catholic. So after seeing all these beautiful things and continuing to go to Mass and baptizing our first son in France, I decided that I would rather look at myself as a practicing Catholic. To me, that was a little bit better because I was still practicing. I was still learning new things. I was still trying to fit myself in. So I was a practicing Catholic. When we returned from France 3 years later with a grandchild, my parents reconciled with us. We hadn't had any contact with them for 3 years. But they did reconcile with us. How could they refuse with a grandchild, their first grandchild? And they were fine with it after that point. They were very helpful to us. Glad to have a grandchild. And they never really mentioned anything about Catholics again. So here I was, a practicing Catholic. I have been that for 50 years. This is our 50th anniversary year. We've been married 50 years. On October 10th, we have 6 grandchildren, all doing well, and 15 grandchildren. Wow. So I got what I wanted. So I am still a practicing Catholic, and what it means to me is that there is help for the good times and the hard times. And we've had our share of hard times. We've had fires, we've had illness, we've had financial troubles, we've had unemployment, we've had the whole thing. That's when my Catholic religion means the most to me, during the hard times. If I can receive the body and blood of Christ, how much better can it get than that? And I feel like I have the Holy Spirit helping me every time He gives me something that I feel like I can't handle, or if I'm afraid, or if I'm anxious. It's all there. It's all there in the Catholic religion. All the helps to make you feel better. So I do everything I can do. I still practice. I'm trying to read the Bible during Lent, which is a little hard for me. At least the Old Testament part is a little hard. But I'm trying to read the Bible every day. I wear miraculous medals. Happen to have one of St. Paul, the most important convert of all, which a friend gave me last year for my birthday. I go to Mass. I receive Holy Communion. I read about the saints. I read the Bible. I do everything I can to learn more, do more, and be a practicing Catholic. And I think Probably the very best decisions I ever made in my life were meeting my husband, my wonderful husband Dale, and having all my children, and becoming a Catholic. And I will continue to practice.
Very nice. Words from the heart. Words from the heart. Yeah. So, is he Catholic and does he smoke? Those are the big questions.
He doesn't smoke, and he is Catholic.
Well, I can tell you from my point of view, I went through a little bit of that too. See, when you're an Irish lad, they already figure you're Catholic. The big question is, can he handle his Guinness? And I had another little secret too. That I was dating a girl once. I lived in the South Hills of Pittsburgh, and I thought, she might be pretty special. So I played the ace in the hole. I took her to midnight mass at St. Bernard's in Mount Lebanon. I was in like Flynn. Well, thanks very much, Lynn. That's beautiful remarks. Beautiful. Now we're gonna change the format a little bit for our featured speakers tonight. First of all, we have two instead of one, so that's something different straight away. But we're going to have Sister Teresa and Father Kevin speak. They'll both speak briefly, and then we really want to open it up to a lot of question and answers tonight. So feel free to join us in give and take after we hear from them. And first we're going to call upon, I've really gotten to know Sister Teresa a lot over the past several months. I mean, I knew her before we started RCIA back in September, but I've really gotten to know her a lot and really appreciate her and her work for us, for our three parishes, since I've seen her on a pretty regular basis every week since Labor Day. She's a wonderful person. Please welcome Sister Teresa Baldi.
Thank you. I'm really glad to be here tonight, and I do have my index cards just so I don't lose my place. But I wanted to tell you a little bit about who I am. I grew up in South Hills in Pittsburgh, in Dormont. It's a suburb of Pittsburgh, and we always called it sunny Dormont because my father believed that the sun always shined in Dormont. But really, there was a feeling of sunshine there. I am the youngest of 5 girls. I have 4 older sisters. Sarah Marie, who lives in Brooklyn, she's here tonight. Paulette and her husband Trooper live in Hawaii, and I got to visit them for Christmas. And Rosemary and Tom have Tommy, my nephews, Tommy 18, and Paul, my godson, who's 15. Rosemary and Tommy are here tonight too. And my 4th sister, Ann Francis and Rob, have my nieces. They are Rachel, who is 14, and Sarah, who is 12. We all attended St. Bernard School. I was in 1st grade, and Sarah Marie was in 8th grade. And we were all there together. I attended St. Francis Academy and went to LaRoche College for my undergrad in sociology, and I attended Duquesne University for my master's in education. In 2004, I decided, after many years of thinking and searching and not being real happy with what I was doing, I decided to at least try a year of being a Sister of the Holy Spirit. And I became a candidate. I kept my job, I kept my car, I kept my money. And then the following 2005, I became a canonical novice. I entered the novitiate. I lost my car, I lost my money, and I lost my job, all at the same time. So I was a canonical novice, which means I just stayed at the mother house and I learned about the order, and they got to know me, and I got to know them a little bit more. As an apostolic novice, I worked in Bloomfield, which is now St. Marie Goretti. I taught 3rd grade there. And in 2007, I took temporary vows. And I continued to work in Bloomfield. And in 2011, I moved to Butler. And in 2012, I took final vows. I live with Sister Patricia, who is the pastoral associate at St. Gregory's in Sealing-Noble. And we are the pioneer women in our community because we have never ministered to the people in Butler. So we are the first ones to be here. We've had people come and join our community from Butler, but we've never been here to work. We are a diocesan order, the Sisters of the Holy Spirit, which means that we only minister in the Diocese of Pittsburgh and sometimes on the outskirts. But we are under the bishop. A lot of other communities are under the Pope. We are under the bishop. He's our boss. Sister Patricia and I start every morning with morning prayer, which is the Liturgy of the Hours. And then we have breakfast together. And in the evening, we pray evening prayer and have dinner as much as our schedules allow. She works real hard, and I have nightly things. So as often as we can, we are together. And then I come to work. I am the catechetical administrator for St. Michael's and St. Peter's and St. Paul's. My office is in St. Paul's Rectory. We have 300 children in our program. We have 25 teachers. We have 2 adult aides and 4 adult hall monitors. And we have Ron, who is the most important person, our donut minister guy. he's the cornerstone of tradition. I work also with RCIA. We have 8 adults this year coming into full communion with the church. One of them is being baptized. We have 4 teenagers as well, and 2 of them are being baptized. I volunteer 1 day a week in the Butler Catholic School cafeteria, and I try to go in and talk to the classes as I'm invited. I got to do a couple hours with the 8th graders a couple weeks ago just to get them the end of their confirmation. And I went into the 1st grade, and I will go in again to the 7th grade. So I'm there as often as they can. I go to visit people at Sunnyview 1 day a week, and I do have a man who is trying to become Catholic, and that will happen as soon as I get verification of his baptism. So that's I'm working on that. He is very excited to be Catholic and be part of the church. I support our Jesus Alive and Living. I help to plan things, and I chaperone. I am on the committee for the Celebration of Faith, which is for graduating seniors. And I serve funerals, and I lecture at weddings. And I also give confirmation retreats at other parishes, and our retreat center in Westview is our Martina Center. Our constitution as Sisters of the Holy Spirit states that we daily should do a couple things. 1, attend Mass, and another is to pray the Rosary, and another is to read spiritual books and spend some time in personal prayer. We have a prayer book in our chapel with names that we take, and we pray for those daily. Sister Patricia and I pray, and we name some of them by name because we think it's really important to not just pray for people in our community, but for people in our faith community and people who ask us. We have what we call a retreat Sunday every first Sunday of the month. It is one of my favorite times. We are fortunate to have the Blessed Sacrament in our house. So we have a tabernacle, and we have an electric candle lit all the time. And so we start out with a holy hour, and we have exposition, and we do the tablet to the Holy Spirit, and we have some retreat Sunday prayers. I, on occasion, will take a desert day, which means I go off by myself and spend some time in prayer and hiking and swimming and just catching up with myself and rejuvenating. I visit Mary Manor, which has our older sisters. We have 8 residents there, and our oldest one is 102. And when she sees you, she'll say, "Hi, how are you?" And then she'll look at you and have a whole conversation with her, and she'll say, "Who are you?" But her only complaint is that she needs a new skeleton. So Sister Loretta is one of my favorite people. I help there with holiday dinners, and I do attend their birthday celebrations. I am also a delegate for our community for chapter, which is like our governing body that we have meetings once every 4 years, and we decide what we're going to work on as a community and which direction we're going to try to move into. So we have community meetings and celebrations at our mother house. We have jubilees and feast days. We celebrate feast days like people celebrate birthdays, and the feast day is when the name saint, your saint died, that we take it from that day. So in my personal time, I like to exercise, and I read mystery novels, and I'm committed to watching NCIS on Tuesday evenings. So I keep up with our correspondence at our house, and I try to do that as well in our church. We live in our own house, just Sister Patricia and I, so I get to clean house, clean bathrooms, and things like a lot of other people do. So I am going to close with my favorite saying. As some of you know, I do not like the snow. I don't like driving in it, and I never think it's pretty. So people ask me why I moved to Butler. Well, I really moved to Butler because I felt God was really calling me to be part of this faith community. And as I state often, coming here, I have been blessed beyond belief. Thank you very much.
Thanks, sisters. Thanks. And you thought you had a busy day. I got a little tired just listening to that. That's true. We'll have the chance to chat informally with the sister in a few minutes. But first we want to hear briefly from a priest that I can't imagine becoming more a part of our community, our communities. St. Michael, St. Paul, St. Peter. Becoming such a part of our community any faster than he has done. Is it possible that he's only been with us for a short period of time? Father Kevin Fazio.
I wake up to that voice every day. It's awesome. As many of you have for years, huh? When I got serious about entering the seminary, which was 2005, around 2005, through numerous discussions with my parents, who are back in the corner there tonight, numerous discussions with them, through tears that my mother was shedding. Linda, unlike you, my mom's plans did not go as she thought they were going to go because of me. My mom asking me, numerous questions about my welfare, about aren't you going to miss never being married, never having any children, and my dad asking questions like, what are you going to do for money? You have car insurance to pay. How are you going to... So my dad's practical questions coming out. My mom's emotional questions coming out. My dad, through a lull in one of the conversations, there's a pause, and he says, what does a priest do all day anyway? What do you do? I think that's why they're here tonight, to find out. I think that's true, actually, because as a child, growing up, a teen, especially, get home from school and sit down to dinner, and the questions from mom and or dad came, so how was your day? And my answer, fine. What did you do? My answer, nothing. When I visit them for dinner these days, basically the same answers I have. So that's why they are here. And actually, I'll maybe touch on that. That's not too far from the truth, actually. I think I'm a little more cordial these days, I hope. But maybe touch on that a little bit later, I think, as a reality of a priest's life, as I'm learning so very quickly. The best definition of a diocesan priest I heard recently actually came from a religious order priest, a Capuchin Franciscan priest, who, his name is Father Bob McCreary. He is Father Matt McLean's uncle. Father Matt lives with us here at St. Michael, and he's the pastor at St. Wendland. And he defined the diocesan priest as this: no matter where you are, what you are doing, or who you are with, there will always be somebody else out there who thinks you should be somewhere else, with somebody else, doing something else. And that could be yourself as the priest, thinking those same things. That is an incredibly accurate definition, I'm finding out, as to what the diocesan priesthood is all about. But I can tell you that it is neither boring nor lonely. Don't let anybody tell you being a priest means being lonely or being bored. I have not had one day where I'm sitting in my room thinking, man, I'm bored. This is the pits. Or I'm longing to be around people. That's built in to the job. Of course, we call it more than a job. We call it certainly a vocation. Right? A vocation. I found that, and maybe talk a little bit later how I came to the priesthood. I know I've given little bits and pieces of my vocation story through homilies and whatnot, but if anybody has any questions, I'd be glad to answer them more in detail later on this evening. But I found that my experience of life itself is far deeper than I could ever imagine. Because I am permitted into the depths of your lives and this community's life and beyond. That I am afforded access into the depths of the human experience. Now, when I have the time to sit and reflect and ponder that blows me away. From all age ranges, from infants to the elderly, men and women alike, adults, children, people who are financially at the top of the chain, people at the bottom. People in this community, people around the world. People who are hurting, people who are healing. People who are on a high, people who are at rock bottom. And that happens weekly, if not more frequently than that. And those moments are some of the most important moments in people's lives. And I'm afforded access into those moments. Deep access. Weddings, biggest part of people's lives, biggest day of their lives up to that point in time. Baptisms of children, biggest days of their lives, especially when it's the first. But not only when it's the first child to be baptized. Funerals. I've buried, year and 3/4 as a priest, I've buried from 4 weeks old to 102 years old. And all in between. That is an unbelievable privilege. That is an unbelievable honor. And it is never lonely nor boring. Ever. It is a life I've found so far that is tremendously fulfilling, but at the same time, you can feel unbelievably inadequate. And I can go into that a little bit more later. But there are times where First Holy Communions, they're fantastic. And you see parents who are just on cloud nine because their child received Jesus for the first time, hopefully for many, many years to come. People who come into the confessional after 20 or 30 years. And the Lord, through me as an instrument, releases burdens that are beyond description. And you can just tell when they walk out there, they are free. You can go home that evening before my head hits the pillow and go, wow. Wow. Doesn't get any better than that. For me, anyhow. But then there are times where I feel so inadequate. Going back to that first statement, the definition of a diocesan priest. Times where I cannot be at certain events, at certain moments in people's lives. Or I feel terrible that I can't be there. When you're asked to participate in different portions of people's lives. Or maybe I say something and I go, oh, man, should I have said that? A priest is a pretty public life. So people cling to your words. People sometimes take your words out of context. Not necessarily they mean to, but it happens. And you feel, oh boy, I'm so inadequate. Times where people are struggling so badly and they don't want you to fix things in their lives, but they do. But they do. And you can't. And you wish that you could. And then in our ultra-sensitive world these days, I'm around children a lot. Sometimes I wonder, my goodness, someone has one bad experience with the church or with me, They say a bad thing about me. They accuse me falsely. My reputation is tainted. So, at the same time, incredibly fulfilling, but incredible feelings of inadequacy or falling short. At least for me. What do I do all day? Every once in a while, I actually record what I do. So, I just thought I would give some examples from a journal that I keep that includes, so far, my priesthood. And I'll go into each one of these a little bit. Well, some of these are from about a year ago. About a year ago up here. This was March last year, March 10th. And I can't remember everything that I do, so I try to capture everything. This was a Saturday. This was a particular Saturday in March. 8 a.m. Mass over at St. Paul's. Prior to that, my morning prayer. Say my morning prayer. And as Sister mentioned, there are prayers, the prayers of the church called the Liturgy of the Hours. You're expected to pray throughout the day. So I have morning prayer by myself in my room or in the chapel here at St. Michael's. And then I had 8 a.m. Mass at St. Paul's, followed by confessions at St. Paul's till about 9:45. Then I went over back here to St. Michael's. I had a funeral at 10 a.m. for a 49-year-old woman who had died tragically in her home in a fire in North Carolina. After the funeral, I had a quick bite to eat. Then I went over to St. Peter's for a 1 p.m. First Reconciliation service that we had, that I led and that I preached at. And then Father Harry and I heard first confessions that day. Went over to the party after that briefly till about 2:30 in the afternoon. Then I went over to the office at St. Paul's for a little bit, responded and sent emails, did some paperwork. Then I went over to the Cubs for a 20-minute swim. Got in a little bit of exercise that day. Back here to St. Michael's for a quick bite to eat, and finished working on my homily for the 6:30 p.m. Mass back over at St. Paul's. After that Mass, stopped on over at Butler Catholic, the gym, to watch 4th grade girls play in a basketball tournament for about 15 minutes. You can't resist when 4th grade girls say, "Father Kevin, you coming to our game? Are you coming?" Then after watching that game for a few moments, I went over to St. Fidelis Parish for a youth group, JAL, Jesus Alive and Living. Our youth group functioned till about 11 p.m. or so. And I can remember the following week, some of the kids at the JAL event saying, "You didn't stay all night with us." Sorry, guys. 11 o'clock wasn't late enough for them. Sorry. But every time I feel like you're being burdened by that, I remember somebody saying to you when I would go over a description of the day, it's good to be needed, isn't it, Kevin? It's good to feel loved. So that always kind of stops me, and I said, okay, he's right. He's right. No complaints from me. The following day was Sunday, and I celebrated 2 Masses. I visited CCD, and then we must have had a pancake breakfast here. And then it was real nice weather, I noted, and I actually got to see my niece, one of my nieces and one of my nephews that day on a Sunday afternoon. That was a Saturday. This is a wild one. This is a really wild one. This was on a Friday in April. This is a year ago. What I just read there is on a Saturday, 60 to 70% of the time. That's what a Saturday is like. At least for me, that's what a Saturday is like. This next one, this is a string of a couple of days starting on a Friday. And this maybe happens, I don't know, 30% of the time. 20 to 30% of the time. This was one. And I preface it by, this life as a priest continues to be one that is highly demanding and never dull. I can't recall everything that happened since Friday, but here are a few of the things. Friday afternoon, I was at Butler High School's track meet. Some of our parishioners are on the track team, so I go over there and I try to support our kids as best as I can. So I was at Butler High's track meet for a little while, and then I headed down to Mars the town of Mars, to meet with a couple whose wedding I was doing later that summer. And while we were in the middle of a very serious meeting, and I can recall it was a very touching and emotional meeting for both of them, the to-be spouses. Right in the middle of it, I got a call on what we call the bat phone, our emergency phone. I was on call that weekend. So right in the middle of this very tender moment, the phone goes off. So I excused myself, and on the other end of the line was a woman who was in clear distress. Clearly her voice was shaking. And once I tried to do my best to calm her down, and I was assured that nobody's life was in danger, either hers or anybody around her, I did my best then to contact a priest in this area who had quicker access to the situation. That dear priest, Father Harry. Father Harry. So somehow I got a hold of Father Harry through calling, I forget, I don't think I got a hold of him initially. I left a message, then I called the office, and finally got a hold of him to take care of the situation. Went back to the conversation, resumed the conversation with this couple, finished up talking about what we needed to talk about, and then there was a funeral, there was a wake service in Mars, at a funeral home right where I was, of a gentleman whom I knew from St. Killian Parish, where I was for 2 summers. And I thought I would just stop on in and say hello to the family members, and I did that. Briefly, before heading back here up to Butler. And I came up here back to Butler to a Butler Catholic School 7th and 8th grade dance. Again, how can you refuse the kids? Are you coming to the dance, Father Kevin? Are you coming? Well, are you going to chaperone? I don't know about that, but I'll stop in for 10 minutes. So, Saturday morning, I was preparing to give a talk up in Slippery Rock for a pre-Cana marriage class. It rotates. It's here now. It was here last Saturday and this Saturday. It rotates our parishes in the Butler area. So I was asked to speak on the sacrament of marriage up in Slippery Rock. So I was preparing for that. I got another phone call on the bat phone. And it was for a woman who wanted me to speak with her. It was not an emergency, so we agreed that I would stop by Sunday after I was finished with Masses. So then I headed up to Slippery Rock. I spoke up there. I returned back here for 3 p.m. confessions at St. Peter, and then I had Mass at 4 p.m. at St. Peter, all the while thinking of my preaching for that Mass and trying to finalize and wrap up that homily. Sunday then, Saturday evening was evidently relatively mild. I'll take it. Sunday had Masses, visited CCD, had the noon Mass. And then there was an event going on over here at St. Michael's. It wasn't church related, I think it was, I don't know what it was. But I stopped in at St. Michael's for an event. Then I went over to this lady's house to talk. Again, in the middle of a very deep conversation, I recall her crying. She was very emotional about a situation. The bat phone goes off again. Right? I had to excuse myself, and it was another woman on the line, a young woman on the line who was beside herself, crying, didn't know where to turn to, but figured someone at the church would answer. So I told her I was currently in a meeting, and I would get over to meet her at St. Peter's as soon as I could. So I finished my meeting with this woman, and then went over to St. Peter's and met with this other young woman who was going through some problems in her life. Had never seen her prior, haven't seen her since. But one of those where I didn't know where else to turn to, so I'll call the church. And I was the one who was on the other end of the line. Then I actually watched some golf. The Masters tournament was playing. So I watched a little bit of Masters golf, and then I had the 7 p.m. Mass back over at St. Paul's Sunday night. Then I went grocery shopping. Great way to finish a Sunday, grocery shopping. And then that week I had three Masses. That was Wednesday, including a funeral Mass, and a lot of marriage stuff. And then I have a note here. My sister gave birth to Chase Joseph, another nephew. That was a year ago, April 15th. I'll give you one more example. This is more recent. This was during our capital campaign. Right? We finished up. We continue with this capital campaign. I didn't write anything else in there. That was really hard. We did really well. At the time, it was really hard. Ask Father Harry. Meetings, phone calls, personal visits, daily, weekly events, and tasks at the parish and the school, masses, attend Butler Catholic School activities. Last weekend, I was on hospital call. And I got called late Sunday night to both Butler Memorial Hospital. On my way home, I got called back up to Sunnyview to anoint folks. And I ended up burying both of those folks on this day that I'm recording this. Monday morning, I got called again to go up to the hospital, but I couldn't go because I had 8 a.m. Mass, so I got them to call another priest to go up and take care of it. Tuesday morning, I got a call at 6 a.m. on the bat phone, and I went to this person's situation. They were at the hospital as well to anoint them. This was interesting. This was on a Thursday. I had 8 a.m. Mass at St. Paul's, so there's a homily there that you have to prepare for. Then I ran over to Butler Catholic School for a 9 a.m. animal blessing. Animal blessing, Butler Catholic School. Then back to St. Paul's for a 10 a.m. funeral, and went to the cemetery after the funeral, went back to St. Paul's, had lunch with the folks there, just in time to have the other funeral at 1 p.m. at St. Paul's. After that funeral, they did not have a luncheon, and I had a meeting at 2:30 at Butler Catholic School for coaching Butler Catholic basketball. That was my day off that week. That was my day off. And then I'll give you one more, which was yesterday. Yesterday would be considered a laid-back day. I went in our chapel for about 10 minutes for Eucharistic adoration before heading over to Mass at 8 a.m. I had 8 a.m. Mass yesterday at St. Paul's. Then stayed at St. Paul's and did some office work, which meant emails, phone calls, receiving and sending emails and phone calls. Started preparing for this event tonight. Preparing for First Holy Communion coming up in a month. Weddings, a lot of wedding meetings right now with folks. With couples whose weddings I'm doing this year and in 2015. So I was doing some wedding paperwork, working on Good Friday. This Good Friday, I'm speaking at the YMCA at 7 a.m. 7 a.m. Thanks, John. Where are you? Thanks, John. 7 a.m. Good Friday. I get to speak to a bunch of folks. So I was preparing a little bit for that speech and emailing John Gibson a little bit about that. Looking at our Mass schedule, I'm in charge of scheduling all of our Masses, the priests, especially looking around Easter week and whatnot, Holy Week. Then I ran some errands. Yesterday morning, I had some time to run some errands. Grocery shop, went to the AT&T store. I was getting killed with text messaging. I didn't have a text messaging plan, and I was getting charged like crazy. So I had to get that changed. So I finally got that changed, and that should be beneficial, hopefully. Then I went over to Butler Catholic School for lunch and visited some of the classrooms there. Back to the office for some more emails, voicemails, working on a letter of recommendation for one of our students going to college, going to high school. Then I prayed my midday prayer back here at St. Michael's in my room. Then I had a block of free time, which was great, from about 3 o'clock to 5 o'clock. And it was so nice yesterday. I went outside. I went and worked out where I work out. So I had that 2-hour time just to get out and kind of do my own thing for a while. Got back here at St. Michael's 6 p.m. for a meeting with a couple for their wedding in July. And then went back when I finished up with that, went right over to St. Peter for the pastoral council meeting at St. Peter's. Finished up at 8 o'clock, went back to the office at St. Paul. Did more returning phone calls. It's helpful because in the evening people are mostly more accessible than during the day, so phone calls made during the evenings. 8:30 back here for dinner, just on my own, just by myself. I prayed my evening prayer and night prayer, and then I watched some really bad Spanish television. I have to learn my Spanish somehow. Father Fernando can't teach me all the time, so I will watch some of our Spanish stations every once in a while. Bad programs, terrible programs, but I at least get to hear Spanish being spoken. And then in bed by 11 o'clock. Monday morning I was at the hospital for a little bit and then had a meeting all afternoon down in the North Hills. So yesterday was more of a laid-back day. That would be a day where you actually have a block of time to kind of do what you want. And I don't get to exercise nearly as much as I would like, but I find it incredibly important for me. I have to keep physically fit in order to keep spiritually fit and emotionally fit and intellectually fit. I like to read. I don't get a chance to read nearly as much as I would like. It's one of those moments where it might be 2 o'clock in the afternoon and I'm reading something and I'm thinking, I should be at the hospital. I should be at Butler Catholic School. I should be visiting the homebound. Those are those things that I'm learning how to deal with. Again, going back to the beginning, thinking you should always be somewhere else or doing something else than what you're doing at that time. I find that my thoughts are always occupied. So if you say that you don't get a break or take a break physically, take a break. I find my thoughts are still going, constantly. At any given time, I can recall a professor in seminary saying, you should have 4 different homilies going on in your head. You have the weekend homily coming up that you're going to give. You're probably going to have a funeral homily coming up, a wedding homily coming up, right? And then your weekday homily coming up. So I'm constantly thinking. I'm doing a lot of preparation right now for speech giving. I gave a retreat to youth this past weekend in West Virginia, so there was a lot of preparation that went into that. I'm speaking at this YMCA event Good Friday, so there's preparation into going into that. This event tonight, there's preparation that goes into that. I'm speaking at a church in Natrona Heights in a couple of, next Tuesday. And I have to prepare for that. I'm asked to speak at young adult activities around the diocese in Murraysville. We don't have any really close to us up here. So there's preparation time spent in that. So my mind is always turning. It is always working, primarily on speaking engagements. During Lent, there are yearly trends, I find. During Lent, during Advent, during Easter, Christmas, yearly trends will dictate your time spent on different things. During the basketball season, an awful lot of my time is spent at Butler Catholic School coaching the varsity boys. An awful lot of meetings, like I mentioned, with couples, preparing them for their weddings coming up. What's kind of neat is that what I just explained to you very briefly, if Father Harry were up here speaking, his would be very different. And Father Fernando's would be very different. And Father Matt McLean's would be very different. And priests from other dioceses would be very different. And I never thought of that prior to entering the seminary, prior to really giving thought to the priesthood. I thought priests were all carbon copies of one another. You just stamped them, cookie cutters. They were all the same. And the life of a priest was very boring and trite. Even within the same household here, aside from celebrating Mass and praying, our lives and the things that we do are quite different. And I don't think a lot of folks would think that or realize that in just the demands of being a pastor, which are different than the things that I'm requested to do at this point in time in my priesthood and in my life. One of the things that I am absolutely astonished by, and it is, again, humbling, and it is something that is incredibly honorable, is when non-Catholics address me as Father. And I know that they're not Catholic. Yet, where I go and work out, most of the folks are not Catholic. Yet they yell out across the room where we're in, Father Kevin, come on over here. That Father in front of my name is beyond description, is a part of those depths of life that I'm afforded access into. It is an amazing life. Being a priest just seems to be what suits me as a vocation. When I was, and I think I told this in my very first homily here, when I was 6 years old and in church with my dad, I noticed these kids with the priest that walked in with the priest, and I said to my dad, "Hey Dad, what are those kids?" And he said, "Well, they're called altar boys." This is before altar girls. He said, "Well, they're called altar boys." And I said, "Well, what do they do?" And my dad said, "Well, they help the priest during Mass." And I paused and I said, "Do they get paid?" And he said, "No." I said, "I don't want to be an altar boy then." This assignment's a very unique assignment in Butler as well. We celebrate Masses at the jail monthly. Celebrate Masses at Sunnyview weekly. Celebrate Masses at Butler Catholic School. Celebrate Masses at the Arbors down the road here. Have 16 nursing homes in our territory parishioners are a part of. Hospital in our territory. And 3 parishes. And I wouldn't want to be anywhere else. Thank you.
Here, we'd like to do some question and answer. Feel free to chat with either Sister or Bob. Back there, sir.
2 questions, Father. The priest yourself, Father Kevin, and Father Tom, I relate to him. Do you have a time when you sit down together and plan a monthly activity sheet, schedule, whatever? And second question, Jesus provides us the food of life, but you also need the food of life. You do your own cooking in the evening, every evening? And what would it consist of?
See the wheels are turning as they answer that one. If I would be in charge of cooking, I would cook cereal every night. We have a young lady that cooks for us dinner. She prepares dinner for us 3 nights a week, Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays. So we attempt to sit down and eat together on those evenings. Not all of us are always here during those evenings, but if we are, then we sit down. Tonight, myself, Father Harry, and Father Fernando had dinner at 5 o'clock, around 5 o'clock. So we try to eat at Monday, Wednesday, Fridays about 5:30 together so that kind of clear our schedules for around those hours. And as far as getting together, it's been a little bit of a transition now that Father Fernando's with us and Father Tom is gone. Father Harry, Father Tom, and I would sit down. We would make monthly meetings where the 3 of us would sit down together and review just our lives a little bit, highs and lows, share with each other a little bit, and then go over our schedules and our schedules in this walk of life. And this isn't the only walk of life, but you have to look so far out in the future in planning. And placing things in. So we have done that, yes.
I wanted to ask you, you go through the seminary and with the sisters' line of work. Do you think when you were preparing for seminary and then when you actually get thrown into it, was it a whole different...
Thrown into priesthood? After seminary?
Yeah, and you have your first assignment.
Right.
Do you think that you had enough support, you were well prepared, and it just felt like, boom, you were out there? And
yeah. Good question. Very good question. I thought that I was pretty well prepared myself in my seminary training and my parish experience prior to being ordained a priest. I spent every summer in a parish once I started seminary, And then once I was ordained a deacon, I was given an assignment in St. Maurice Parish in Forest Hills. And I was there quite frequently, not only that summer, but I was there every weekend during my last year of seminary, and then 2 weeks I spent there. It's what Deacon Luis is doing right now. Except he's not from this diocese. Me being from this diocese, I spent all of my breaks at the parish. So I got a nice taste of parish life as a deacon, but there's no way you can simulate what a priest does before you're ordained a priest. So you're very early on in this assignment. It was within a month of this assignment. Father Harry and Father Tom were both away for a few days, and I had emergency calls and funeral and whatnot. And I said, "Well, I'm wigging out here. I need a break." So I took one afternoon and went over to the Y, and I just played basketball for 3 hours. It was just something I needed to do to get away in the middle of the afternoon, which is fantastic. So, and I think this assignment is a unique assignment where I think Bishop Zubik assigned me here because he knew I was with a great man, with Father Harry, and that given my life experience, that I could deal with it versus maybe somebody who is a little bit younger, that's coming right out of high school, right out of college, that never had worked before, never really had known what it's like to pay bills or to be responsible, have a job, really. So I think that's one of the reasons why Bishop Zubik put me here.
Okay. The second part of my question, do you feel like you have, I know you go on retreats and, to rejuvenate yourself, but do you feel you have a good support system for you whenever, you can't always be here? Who lifts you up? Who, I know you have daily prayer, but, within the community, do you get a lot of support to
Another great question. The support from this community is fantastic, no doubt about it. And I heard one of my seminarian professors say, there's a difference between taking care of somebody and caring for. Taking care of someone, I'm taking care of my children, they're dependent upon me. I'm taking care of my aging mom or dad, they are dependent upon me. Versus caring for, which is more of a mutual relationship. And his point was priests should be caring for their people, and people should be caring for their priests, not taking care of. Right? And I feel that support here from this community. And every once in a while you get slammed by somebody, and it seems like those are the times that stick with you the most. Not all the great things and nice things people say to you. So I get slammed like anybody else does occasionally. But beyond that, one of the things that most concerns me about the priesthood is being burned out. Spiritually being burned out. I know some folks were upset that we went from 3 daily masses to 2, but I can tell you that's a huge benefit for your priests. I was celebrating 54 masses a month. That's too many. And you can get massed out. I don't care what anybody says, you can get massed out. So 7 p.m. Sunday night, you're up there. Lord be with you. I mean, you're going through the motions. And that has been hugely beneficial for us because we celebrate funerals and masses at the school and at the jail and at the nursing homes. If you wonder, I didn't read any of those little journal notations as to when I question myself, when am I being spiritually fed? When am I feeding myself? When am I rejuvenating myself daily? It has to be in the Eucharist. It has to be in my personal relationship with Jesus Christ. I have to have that. But there are times in my day where I do not pray that, what Sister called and I call it the Liturgy of the Hours. I don't pray every single part of it. And I made a promise to pray that at my ordination. But there are times when you say, I don't know where I'm going to squeeze it in. When am I going to eat? When am I going to eat physically? When am I going to eat spiritually? So that's a concern. That's a concern of mine, for myself, certainly. But above that, you should have a good spiritual director to go to, and a good confessor, and sometimes they're the same person. So you can just unload on them, and they just listen to you for an hour, and just unload on them. And I think Sister probably has a spiritual director as well. You can just unload, and they're just great to just listen to. They're great to listen to you. You need that. That's one of the reasons, going back to telling my parents what I do every day, telling my family, I found a few things. If they do ask me, if my sisters or brothers-in-law ask me, what did you do today? And then I start telling them, inevitably our conversation gets interrupted by one of the kids. So that's just inevitable. That's going to happen. Or I can see, as I start to explain to them, I see them start gazing in the distance. They really don't care. So that's why I keep the answers short. And I think one of the reasons is, and again, a wise seminary professor told me once, your burdens shouldn't become your family's burdens. There's a lot of stuff we get exposed to that's heavy stuff. A lot of heaviness of life. And I didn't want to go into some of the heavy times that I've experienced with illnesses, with death, tragic deaths. Talked a little bit about one. But this heaviness, and to go home and unload it on your mom, I'm not going to do that to my mom. Right? If there's anyone who's going to listen to me, it's my mom. Right? But just to unload on those things, that's for my spiritual director, for me to unload upon. Or Father Harry and I, and Father Fernando, to kind of discuss with each other. And then I think also why when I start talking to family a little bit, or even friends a little bit, is that the priest is this unique relationship with Jesus Christ and with people, that these events of my life and of your lives, when I try to share that with other people, they really don't get it. Because they can't. Because they can't. They don't have that same access that we do as priests. That's why it's so crucial to have good priest friendships and relationships, which is another challenge for me. Just get enough time to spend quality time with priest friends, along with non-priest friends that I've had for a long, long time in my life. And enough time with family as well. I didn't even mention those. Those slots of my life are very small right now. Family time, friend time, and my own time. Very small. And that's just part of this life. And that's part of this assignment as well. And other people have the same challenges. It's not just priests. Other people have the same challenges when you have families and whatnot. So it's not going to be woe is me as a priest. I knew what I was getting into. I had a pretty good idea what I was getting into. But that's just part of the life as a priest.
Any questions for Sister? Yes.
I have one for Father Kevin.
Sure.
You had mentioned that you may have 4 homilies going in your head at all times. How do you do when you get that impromptu bathroom call where you're not prepared?
There was a class I had in seminary's most valuable class taught by a rabbi. And it was on counseling. Boy, I still look at my notes regularly on how to deal with those bat phone calls. And one of the first things that you do if someone calls is to be assured that no one's life is in danger, and to try to answer them calmly and with a sense of reassurance for that person. And ultimately, you rely upon the Holy Spirit to take care of that.
One over here, I saw a hand.
Sister Teresa, I wanted to ask you how many nuns there are in your order now, and where is your mother?
When I first entered, I was the 48, and now we are down to 35 because a lot of our sisters are older, and we've had a lot of deaths, especially in the last couple of weeks.
And you said the order was Sisters of the
Holy Spirit.
Is
And
that
we
the
are,
same as the Holy Ghost Sisters?
yes, they had Holy Spirit Academy, Holy Ghost Academy,
Holy Ghost in
Westview.
because I went to St. Alphonsus School in Wexford, and we had the Holy Ghost nun.
Oh, great. Great.
And one of my friends, her name is Sister Cynthia. Do you know her? She's
Yes, Cynthia Wessel?
yes.
Yes, she is the principal at St. Agnes in West Mifflin.
Yeah, we went to school together at St. Alphonsus. I'm just wondering. Because back then, I think the nuns wanted everybody to be nuns. This is like 8th grade. How many are you going to come forward? And it was, a lot of people back then. But now it's sad there's so few. Thank you for the good work that you do.
And one of the jobs that I have to do is that I keep praying for more vocations because I'm the last vocation in our community. I'm the 3rd youngest in chronological age, but I am the last vocation, so to speak. But we're always hopeful. We're always out there talking and putting ourselves out there. So thank you.
Yes, in the back.
Sister,
Sister?
just one question. Just notice, Father Kevin, yourself for the lay vocation, you say, I'm not sure. What do you say to people in your age group that's probably reflecting why you went to the club. Do you give advice there?
I think one of the things that I always try to do is just talk about how it was for me. I had moved out of my parents' home, was living in my own apartment, going to school, going to work, working 2 jobs, and I was missing something big. And I had a prayer life, I had a spiritual director, but there was something missing. And it took me a while to finally say, okay, I'll try it. And I said, I'll try it for a year. That's why you get to keep your job for a year and your car and your money. And at the end of the year, you can either say, see you, or I'll go on. And that's what I did. Other people who I think are sometimes when they come and talk to me about their own vocation they think they may have, I just talk to them about just being open to the Spirit's call. And really that's how I got to be a sister of the Holy Spirit, because the Spirit just moved me to a deeper level. It said, this is where you should be. And every time I go into our Mother House parking lot, I always feel like, oh, I'm coming home. This is my second home. So.
Any other ones? Yes.
For Father Kevin, I just wanted to know if your mother had any influence on your fact that you let your hair grow.
If my mother had any influence that I'm letting my hair grow. She hasn't said anything to me yet. I'm waiting to hear about it. We're supposed to visit my grandmother, my mom's mom, tomorrow in Cleveland. My mom and I are going to go. She's 91, and she, her health's been failing for a little while, and hopefully celebrate Mass with her in her room where she is tomorrow. And I wonder if she'll say anything to me about my hair growing long. It's interesting. It's one of those, you feel inadequate sometimes. Not hair follically inadequate. I sometimes feel inadequate. Every once in a while I will hear my mom will say, I talked to Grandma yesterday, and she said, haven't seen Kevin for a while. Gotta get up to Cleveland. Nothing else. We got 5 minutes more if anyone has any questions.
Let's get to the hard ones. I have a quick question for Sister.
I know that priests have to study, they need to get degrees in philosophy and in theology, right? It's mandated 8 years.
6 to 8 years.
You have a master's in education?
Yes.
Is there any sort of a mandated degree or curriculum for sisters? Or can it vary?
You mean for education or?
For any sort of...
Okay. I came to community with my master's in education. A couple of our sisters have gone to college and received bachelor's and master's as they've been with us. But when you first become to community, the first year you're sort of just like checking it out. But the second and third year, the novitiate, is really when you learn about what it means to be a sister in that particular community. So my canonical year, where I stayed at home, and you can ask my sisters, it was one of the hardest years of my life because I was only allowed to talk to my mom and dad once a week and be on the computer once a week. But that was the year that I really spent time praying and discerning and really trying to figure out this is where God wanted me to be. And that was the first year of novitiate. And from there, it went on. You have 2 years of novitiate and then 3 years of temporary profess where I take temporary vows. And then I have up to 6 years. And I took 5 years to finally make the final vows. So there is a process. But my education was not a question. There are sometimes they say, well, we would like you to get your education before you take your vows or to move from this spot. But I already have my master's.
Any other questions?
Yeah, I have one.
Yes, Linda?
When my husband and I were living in Boynton Beach, Florida, teaching school there was a priest who had been a Baptist minister, was going to school to be a Baptist minister. And he heard about the Catholic religion somehow and decided to be a priest instead. He was quite entertaining because he had all these stories of the Deep South and being a boy in the Deep South. But I was wondering how much study do you do on other religions besides being a Catholic while you're in seminary?
Very little. You do. There's the objectives is to get the 2,000 plus years history of the church crammed into 4 years of theology. So you touch on a little bit of primarily Lutheranism because of Martin Luther, and a little bit of Protestantism, but not much.
Apparently he got enough.
Anybody else?
Well, we're blessed to have these two individuals in our parishes. And thank you, folks, for coming and making not only tonight, but this entire year of Catholic Alive a really pretty neat thing. Over the past, especially the past 2 or 3 months, I've bumped into more and more people who have been here a time or two. Some of you I know have been here a lot, and they've really enjoyed it, and that's because of your participation. We do invite you to continue to pray for our candidates. Many of them are here tonight, as they are every Wednesday. And very soon, they'll be welcomed into full communion with the church. That'll happen Saturday evening before Easter. We call it Easter Vigil. There will be one Easter Vigil liturgy for all 3 parishes. It'll be at St. Michael's this year, Saturday evening, April 19th at 8:30 p.m. And you're welcome to come. I don't know if all of you are regular attendees at Easter Vigil. I know my personal experience is pretty neat because I used to go when I was a kid, when I was an older boy. I came from a very, very small parish. My father actually taught my brother and I how to serve Mass because he had done it at his parish in Turtle Creek when he was a kid. And I can remember him telling us the first time we served Easter Vigil. It was even longer back in those days than it is now. But all of the things when you're serving that liturgy, you've got to do a million things. Make sure the candle's ready. Back in those days, you had to carve the Alpha and the Omega and stick the incense, wax incense. It was a whole evening, and it was a wonderful thing. And then, as I was no longer an altar server, and I stopped going to Easter Vigil. It wasn't any conscious decision. I just didn't go for a long, long time until I got involved with RCIA with Monsignor Glenn at St. Paul. That was the first time I'd been to Easter Vigil in many years. It's such a wonderful, wonderful thing. It's a long liturgy, but it's magnificent. It's magnificent. So if you haven't been there recently, please consider coming, and especially this year, so you can kind of wrap up our whole year with our candidates. Starts at 8:30 on Saturday. And coffee and some treats afterwards. Please partake. A little conversation. And we thank so much John Reddick and Jordy Hamilton and Miriam Shakely for being here tonight, and they'll help us close out our evening with a song.
Would everyone please stand? Easter hasn't arrived yet, so we'll close with the hymn Hosea. It's number 3.